We're now on to our speakers, and our first speaker is Don Prue. He's been a member of Carrollwood Toastmasters Club for over 3 years. He told me that when it comes to the benefits of Toastmasters, the best thing in front of a group and give a speech. You'll never feel safer than in front of a Toastmasters Club. Whether you bomb, even John Morse might say, that was a great speech. You'll get constructive criticism, but it'll be delivered in a positive way. And for those not afraid, why not hone your skill? He's been warning of this impending calamity for almost 40 years. They seem to have fallen on deaf ears. Time is running out for us to take action to prevent the coming disaster, and it won't be pretty if we don't meet the challenge ahead. Please welcome Don Prue as he presents his Leadership Development Pathways Level 1 fourth speech entitled A Very Scary Future for America. A Very Scary Future for America.
Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, this story is about a very scary future for America. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic that is wreaking havoc on our health and economy. I know there's a lot going on about social injustice and racial prejudice that has infected America for centuries. But this story is not about those challenges. It is about something that seems innocuous, but will have a devastating consequence on our future. It's about our national debt. To many, a very boring subject, but to your future, and maybe more importantly, to your children and your children's future, it should be of great concern. Let's start by educating you a little. Let's look at the U.S. budget. The U.S. budget is what our country takes in through taxes and spends in 1 year. Now let's look at 2019. In 2019, our expenditures were $1 trillion on Social Security and Medicare, $1 trillion on Medicaid, $375 billion on interest expense, $642 billion on other, $676 billion on defense, and finally $661 billion on non-defense expenses. This brought our total expenditures to 2019 to $4.4 trillion. Now let's look at revenues. Individuals paid $1.7 trillion in taxes. Corporate taxes were $0.5 trillion. And finally, we collected payroll taxes of $1.2 trillion. That totaled $3.4 trillion in revenue for 2019. That meant we operated at a deficit of $1 trillion. It raised our national debt to $22.5 trillion. And because of the money we've been spending in combating the economic crisis of COVID-19, our national debt is estimated to be at $26 trillion and climbing. Now, as a government, there are times when you do need to operate at a deficit. Some examples include the Depression of the 1930s, World War II, the Great Recession of 2008. Even today, to fight the economic effects of the pandemic, we need to deficit spend to protect the economy from long-term damage. Our failure is during good economic times when we should be paying these debts down, or at the very least, not operating at a deficit. This chart shows that from 1948 to 1974, we followed that fiscal philosophy and had almost no deficit. There were even a few years when we had a surplus. Then in 1975, we started to operate at a deficit. And with the exception of 2000, when President Clinton followed the guidance of his Federal Reserve chairman and lowered our annual deficit down to almost zero, we have been operating at a deficit every year. I believe Ronald Reagan showed the American politician that the people don't care about our national debt. The politicians realized they could keep spending like drunken sailors and just kick the can down the road. The next chart is the one that makes me fear for America's future. In 2001, George Bush became president, lowered taxes, and went to war. As you can see, it had an immediate effect on the deficit by increasing it to over $1.5 trillion by 2003. Then the financial crisis caused the Great Recession of 2008, and the deficit ballooned to $1.9 trillion in 2009. Now, in 2020, we are projected to have a $3 to $4 trillion deficit. How will this all end? Those who think it can be solved by just increasing taxes on the rich will be very disappointed. The wealthy will be able to extricate themselves from America and move themselves and their money someplace safe. So, if you are a 1%er, you have no worries. But if you are not, you need to worry. The solution is going to be painful. There is no easy way out of this if we want to survive as a nation. The challenge is ours. We need to find a way to elect people willing to cut spending and raise taxes in a responsible manner. If we don't get our fiscal house in order, make sure your children and their children, Che Si Song Wen, learn Chinese, Mr. Toastmaster.